history will look back on the 1950s to 2000 as the period of aberration. You know, we built factory schools, we simplified our expectation of what learning should be in the most extreme way, and we practically killed it. Look, a really nice example. To get a first-class honours degree as a student in the 1950s, I'd had to produce something that would astonish my professors. They'd look at my script and they'd call their friends at this. Look at this! Have you seen what he's put? Amazing stuff, you know. They'd be surprised by my answer. Now, to get a first-class honours degree, I have to produce the least surprising script. I produce the script that's been anticipated absolutely by everybody else, that fits the mark scheme exactly. So, in 50 years, you know, we turned learning around from something that valued ingenuity and creativity, mutuality and imagination to something that rewards conformity and certainty. We've trapped ourselves in a world of short-termism and incrementalism, where a little bit better will do. And I think the absolute certainty of working with children and learning is a little bit better. It doesn't begin to do. We could have stellar, we could have so much better. But we've got to stand back and take a deep breath and a leap of imagination to go there. Absolutely, we have. I was extraordinarily lucky because I started teaching with no professional development at all, after I'd started, I did a proper postgraduate certificate course in the evenings. I'll come back to that in a moment. But so I arrived in a classroom, and I had a bunch of lads. This was a 14 to 18 boys' school in East London, so you can imagine it was a lively place and a lot of fun. And here was a class who'd been, from some trick of the timetable, had been put on an O-level course, which is quite a high-level course academically for that age. And this was the only exam they were doing. And when I got to them, which was round about the Easter, they'd covered nothing. They'd had two terms out of 5. They'd done nothing. They had supply teachers. They had all sorts of people had drifted through, you know. And I sat down with them and said, look, in all honesty, lads, you know, I can get you through this exam, but what I don't know about is teaching. So here's the deal. You tell me what's effective in teaching, and I'll tell you what's effective in passing the exam, and we'll do this together, you know. And it was, of course, straight away there was that insight that there was something in that meta-level reflection, in them thinking about themselves as learners, that triggered something in their minds. And they'd come every lesson at the beginning, and they'd say, "We've been watching Arthur Harvey. He's extraordinary. When he gets cross, he gets quiet. It's really scary, you know. Well, we've been looking at Minnie Norris. We don't know how she does it. There's a force field around a formula. When you get close, you feel yourself needing to be good, you know." So they reflected on the excellent teachers that were in the school and all around, and brought that to me. And that the voice of the learner, you know, right back then in the 70s, you know, was a powerful voice there. I talk sometimes about certainties and hunches, you know, and sheer plain guesses, you know, but that certainty that listening to the learner voice doesn't just give you an insight into how you might make learning better. It also gives them that role of reflective practitioners, reflective learners, that propels them into it's stellar. You know, the minute they start thinking about themselves and they're learning about how it might be different, off they go. You know. And now, of course, we're all over London, we're all over the world, really. We've got children sitting, watching their teachers teach and offering feedback on the quality of the teaching. We've got children in the debate about the design and shape of their schools, talking about the curriculum. Gosh, there's a school up in Liverpool where they could see that the children were bored with the curriculum for their exam work, so they've just extended the exam work a year longer and said to the kids, well, let's add the bits that you want. So, you know, into the physics exam has gone a third of what the children were saying. We want to know about the physics of mobile phones, and we want to know about the physics of video technology, and that all got plugged in. So, you know, everywhere around the world, that penny's dropped. That you know, listen to the learner. you know, a lot of the work I do emphasises that sense of mutuality, of usness, of belonging. And I'll tell you what, in those tough schools, you know, you felt a sense of belonging. I was memorably, I got stopped by a policeman once on my way to teach, you know, and I had an illegal wheel on the car. The tyre was too bald, you know. I was reflecting on this to the kids, you know, and the next day 5 of them turned up with a wheel, you know. Oh, I got your wheel, Chief, you know. Which was a warmth there, albeit, you know, no, I really can't take those, you know. But it was sort of reaffirming that they'd bothered to find a car that matched with tyres the same, you know, and presumably borrowed them. You know. I think, in all honesty, what those tough but enjoyable schools brought home was that if you could teach in an engaging way, engagement was the secret weapon. And that was then. I mean, now in the 21st century, where attention is the scarcest thing on the planet, you know, if you've got a movie on YouTube, if you've got a little glint of celebrity, if you've got a record, if you've got a skill, an art, a design flair, if you've got a character that attracts attention, that's the most valuable thing. Well, you know, it was pretty clear then that the teachers that were engaging were the most seductive. And of course, they were in that eternal battle of, oh, go on, sir, tell us about the Antarctic, you know, no, we really must stay on the syllabus, you know. And so they were battling between what they were supposed to do and what their hearts told them they should do. You just see things from watching people. And I think in the classroom, you know, you watch what seems to be effective, and there's no blowing a light bulb, that's the way to do it. You just think, yeah, I thought that was going to work, you know, and I think, oh, that's an interesting variation. There's a subtlety I hadn't thought of, and that's a really good idea. Let's try that next time. And you just slowly your hunches become certainties, you know, and then because you reach out for more hunches, and other people's certainties become your hunches, and you look for a little more evidence, and slowly you accumulate the evidence, really, of what works and what doesn't work. I mean, this, you know, with perilously shorter metrics of what makes great learning. You know, we've got exams, we've got attendance. You know, we haven't got very many hard metrics, but most teachers have got a built-in metric. You know, they know when a class is attending. They know when people are focused on the task in hand. When they're, you know, and the caretaker will tell you when he's got to jangle his keys to get the kids out of the building at the end of the day, you know, because they don't want to stop what they're doing, and when they're arriving early to carry on with their projects. You know, you go to schools with project-based work, and you'll find children that are just passionate about their learning, just don't want to stop. So tell me about the project. Tell me what you're doing.
It's called Essential Faces in 100 different places, and basically all we do, we interview people from their ages 1 to 100.
Yep.
And so we do this in our local community.
So you're finding 100 people in your local community, a 1-year-old and a 2-year-old and a 99-year-old and a 100-year-old. Gosh. So you've got some standard questions that you ask everybody.
The questions we ask is what's your name, your age, what you had for breakfast. And what we found out was that different cultures have different breakfasts. Like a Filipino woman we interviewed, just recently, she told us that in Philippines they have rice and they eat with fish and they dip the fish in vinegar for breakfast. And a Chinese woman said she had pot noodle for breakfast.
Well, they do have noodles and soup and things.
And also an Indian man said he had chicken legs. And that's quite unusual, because for me, when I wake up, I just probably have toast and a cup of tea.
What do you have for breakfast?
I just have like a cereal or something.
Cereal bar, innit?
So I just wanted cornflakes.
The 100-year-old, he was really, really interesting to talk to, because he told us about like how he could...
Oh, it's a man, was it? Because usually it's women that live the longest, you know.
And he told us about how he could cross the road when he was 6 years old.
Oh, yeah.
Because there was no cars.
No cars, no, just traffic. Traffic was a horse, you know.
All of them were comparing it with another school in Goa and in Ghana.
Oh, yes.
And the school in Goa are finding it very difficult to find people over their 50s, whereas we're finding it very difficult to find people over their 80s.
Yes.
And this kind of suggests that we live longer than people over Goa. So we have a mortality rate. So
think in the old days, we'd have looked at this and thought and reflected about how we could have a policy. And the policy would have been written and there would have been a draft and people would have reflected on the draft for 9 months and then policy would have been put in place and reviewed after 5 years. It's flipping obvious to anybody that this is moving too quickly for that. And we've got to say to teachers, it's okay. The quality of this work is so good, we don't want to stop it. And I mean, you can see it's collaborative, it's ingenious, it's stage not age, it's 24/7, it's global, it's learning elsewhere. Tick all the boxes for 21st century learning. All we've got to say is we can't begin to legislate for this. So what the politicians do, I think they just tear up the rule book and they say, as politicians, we want the smartest children on the planet and the happiest children on the planet. And hey, no surprise the two go together. Technology in a way has been very clever because it's brought children those technicolor moments on their own. They've learnt to do things that their parents weren't aware of. They've pushed out the boundaries of what they can do with the technology way ahead of their teachers' expectations. So the children are beginning to build those technicolor moments on themselves, saying, look at what we can do, look at what we've done, look at what we've achieved. And that mutuality, that self-helpness just has been hugely propelling of children's confidence. And what we've got to do now is respond to that confidence. Every turned off device is a turned off child, and people are responding to kids coming through the door with a phone saying, let me show you what I can do with my phone. You're not supposed to have that in school. I mean, that's just, it's madness, madness, madness. Well, it turns out with the docks and with transport and more recently with finance, there is no they. There's nobody. There's only us. It's you and me, and it's us. And I think the lesson from all this is that we can't wait for they to come along and tell us what 21st century learning looks like. We know what it looks like. We absolutely know. We know that what we've been doing with the factory schools with children sitting in rows and bells ringing and kids going to a class and then stopping just when they're getting engaged and going to another class, sitting in groups because they're all born between 2 Septembers, and ringing a bell and expecting 1,000 children to be simultaneously hungry. I mean, we know that there's madness in all that, but because it keeps delivering on our short-term targets, nobody stepped back far enough to see that it really isn't sustainable. And my worry is that learning will be lost in the way that the docks were lost, or learning will be lost in the way that the finance industry has just collapsed. And I'm passionate about it. Now, cross fingers and learning will survive, but it might just be the death of education. And that'd be okay, because I think what children are doing in building a new model of 21st century learning is as exciting as the transformation in transport at the heart of London, as the transformation when they put electricity through this place, when this bridge used to work on artesian water. The water pumped, the pressure lifted the bridge up. That's all gone. It's electric power now that does it. And those revolutions, I think, were nothing compared to the revolution of learners building 21st century learning. So I think it'll be all right. But I'm nervous about what happens when education collapses, because we've been waiting for they to come along. And they aren't going to come along, ever.
What we've tried to do is use this as a test bed, so when we move into the new build, we've got staff who are going to be confident at using machines, confident at using different spaces.
And just walking around without that single point of focus. And so
that's right. And there isn't really one place where I could stand as a teacher and say, this is my domain.
No,
I mean,
no.
I can lead a lesson from anywhere in this room.
Yes.
And students can just touch down for a brief space of time, perform a task, and then move on to something else. They're not set for long periods of time in front of a fixed desk with a fixed screen doing something.
But that agility leaves them focused for longer. It was something about being trapped in a box, in curriculum, in time, in location, in furniture, that was actually very discomforting. You put a little bit of agility into a space, and suddenly you've got long-term engagement, which is really interesting.
Yeah.
Well, it's quite interesting with furniture, because when you've got students sitting on an outside curve, tend to be quite gregarious. I'm not entirely sure why, but they tend to, their eyes go around the room, they tend to look around. When they're on an inside curve, and there's you haven't got any here, there's one here. When you're on an inside curve, that's sort of hollow like that, they tend to be very focused, and they tend, so here, you know, they tend to, and if 3 students are working here, I'll tell you what, their eyes won't go around the room very much. If they're working here on the outside curve, their eyes go around the room a lot. Well, of course you want both of those, and they're both desirable. That's why this is such a good design. But so often in school, you only see the straight line, and you don't see hollows, you don't see concave or convex. And I think, looking at some of the new buildings that have gone wrong, and gosh, there are plenty of those. They've tried to say it's finished now. You come in, and in this space, this is how you teach. Well, maybe now, but what about tomorrow and tomorrow? And I think that's the hardest thing, is for schools to become the glue in their lives. You know, there was a point when the school was the plumbing. You know, it delivered everything. It was the network. Now, you know, they're in Facebook. Their pictures are in Flickr. Their videos are on YouTube. You've got to be the glue that pulls that all together and makes sense of it. That's a very, I think that's a very different task architecturally. So you've got to build usness into the architecture in a way that says, hey, it's still worth coming, you know. Now we're looking at a whole different range of schools. We're looking at schools that produce ingenious, collaborative, gregarious, brave children who care about stuff like their culture. And to build schools that do that is a whole another challenge. And around the world, you know, people are testing out the ingredients of what makes that work. And those ingredients are being assembled into some just stunning recipes in different places. It's a very exciting time for learning. It's the death of education, but it's the dawn of learning. That makes me very happy.